privacy and data security. And again, as Dr. Smith so eloquently stated, this webinar today is part of a 1-year series we are doing called Data Governance Mastery. We're taking critical topics within this field and really grinding into the details. So buckle up, let's have a little bit of fun. As Anne-Marie said, we have many partners. I especially want to thank the Institute of Information Management, who's just been a wonderful partner of ours for so long. Here's a background of EW Solutions. We have been doing and building enterprise data governance programs since 1997. We've done more of them successfully than probably any 2 or 3 companies put together. We've been blessed enough to win almost every award you can. So when I speak about this topic, I want to give you the best practices. What are companies doing today in order to be successful? So this slide is just merely a background slide for me. I did include a couple things of interest. I am on LinkedIn. I publish articles and videos there. Please go, if you don't follow me already on LinkedIn, go over there, follow please. And then I also included my email. If you have a question for your data governance program or you need help with it, please feel free to shoot me an email. What am I going to talk about today? Regulations driving data governance. I will hit some of the large ones. I'm going to go through some fundamentals on data and information security. I'm going to talk to you about the differences between data security and data privacy because they're not the same thing. I'm going to show you some data security classifications. I'm going to show you a really great artifact. We have the industry's only data governance implementation methodology, and I'm going to show you one of our best artifacts that very few people know about. It's a regulatory subject spreadsheet, and I'm going to give you an example of a regulatory data policy workflow. This is the kind of stuff that is rocket science in the world of data governance. If you haven't built these processes before, you won't know them. So we're going to go through all of them. And we are streaming live on YouTube. So let's look at regulations driving data governance. So number 1, GDPR. This has been a big one. As Anne-Marie laughs, it has just been so large in our industry. GDPR, which is General Data Protection Regulation, as if you didn't know, is a regulation in the European Union. And it's all about protecting your data privacy of a consumer. And here's the big point. So first up, companies don't care about that. They care about the second bullet. Fines for GDPR can be as high as 5%, not of net revenue or net income, gross revenues. So if you're a $5 billion, so if you are a $100 billion company, you can be fined as much as $5 billion. I mean, this regulation has teeth in it. And if you don't believe me, if you think, well, nah, the European Union, they're in Europe, they're nice over there. No, they have levied some big fines. I'm looking at Anne-Marie laughing. No, they have levied some big fines. Ask Google about that. France's data protection regulator, CNIL, issued a $56.8 million, that's US dollars, because I know we have some folks from Canada here, for Google for failing to comply with GDPR. And this happened about 1.5 years ago. And here's this last bullet. I've been saying this last bullet for over 1.5 years, ever since GDPR came to being. It's only a matter of time before we get GDPR-esque regulation here in the United States. I can tell you right now, right as I'm speaking here, the Republicans in Congress have a GDPR bill that they are pushing through. And if you think only one party is doing this, you'd be wrong. The Democrats have a very similar GDPR-esque bill that they are pushing through. Both parties are pushing it. It's only a matter of time. I'm actually shocked we don't have one already. But I would think, especially for those who don't know, we're in an election year here in the United States, so it's an interesting time. Not a whole lot's going to happen now, but I would suspect in 2021 the USA version of GDPR will be out. I would certainly think, because we're all for it. We all want our privacy to be protected. So let me continue, because is this only about GDPR and futuristic stuff? No, no. We have a bunch of this stuff. There's something in the United States that banks deal with called Know Your Customer, KYC. And when you hear KYC, you may be thinking, is that some fried chicken type of regulation? Nope, has nothing to do with that. It is guidelines in finance. I almost got Anne Marie to really laugh at that. I was working on I saw her try to hold it in. Guidelines for financial services requiring that professionals make an effort to verify the identity, suitability, and risks involved in maintaining a business relationship. That sounds so odd. Well, KYC and this next regulation are paired. They're really interlaced. The AML, anti-money laundering, bank regulations and anti-money laundering regulations, these came about after 9/11. So the whole point was we wanted to prevent people's ability to launder money. We wanted to make sure that banks knew who the customer really was. You couldn't just walk into a bank with a suitcase of money and open a giant account. We needed to actually know who you are. And I got to tell you, you talk about regulations that have teeth in them. From 2008 to 2018, $26 billion of fines have come about. If you're a bank, and I know we have a whole bunch of financial institutions here at this webinar, you know about AML, you know about KYC, and you know these fines are real. Over 91% of that 26 billion comes right from the US government. So these are significant fines, and they're real, and they're not going away. So let me continue, because we are not done. Another piece of regulation that many of us are aware of is the California Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA. And this is a Californian state statute that really is to defend people's privacy. Here are the criteria. So this regulation only applies to companies who have annual gross revenues above $25 million. Here's the key word coming up: or, not and, or process the personal information of 50,000 or more consumers, households, or devices. Again, another or, not an and. So if you have 20,000 consumers in 20,000 households with 20,000 devices, that's 60,000, you now are under the auspices of CCPA. One more: or, more than half your company's annual revenue comes from selling customers' personal information. So this covers just about certainly any mid-sized or larger firm, and many smaller firms as well. Fines here are by violation. The maximum fine per intentional violation, big word, intentional, $7,500. So this doesn't have the same teeth that GDPR does. It's not 5% of gross revenues. However, it is significant because there's no cap on the fines. So what if you had 1 million violations, which is easy to do in an automated world like we live in? That's very easy to do. You take that million, you multiply it by 7,500. That can become a lot of money fast. We've not seen that type of fining yet, but it is possible under GDPR, under CCPA. Another big one is the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, the NDPR. That came about in May of 2020 from the National Information Technology Development Agency. Nigeria, for people who don't know, 7th largest country in the world. And I just want to quote exactly what it says from their constitution. And this is in the constitution for the country. The privacy of citizens their homes, correspondence, telephone conversations, and telegraphic communications is hereby guaranteed and protected. Wow, talk about regulation with teeth in it. It's very similar when you read about the NDPR, very similar to something we have in the United States called FIPPs. If you don't know what FIPPs is, don't worry. It's in a slide coming up. So, other regulations, Nevada has one, the state of Oregon has one, and there are even more. I'm not going to bother you with all of them because when the federal one comes out, which we know it's coming, it's going to probably do away with a lot of these. So let me continue. Let's look at data governance and data security, key topic. So let me give you just some backgrounds and some fundamentals. Effective data security policies and procedures ensure that the right people can use and update data in the right way. It's very important. So I'll share a personal story that it's entertaining to me. Maybe it'll be entertaining to you. For a long time, we worked with the FBI. So big time organization. I personally had something called a TS-SCI clearance. It's just like a really high-end security clearance. And when people know that, they think, wow, David, so what's really happening at Area 51? I want to know this. I want to know, do we have alien spacecrafts and all this stuff? Guess what? I don't have any clue. My clearance certainly would be very high where you would think I would know that, but that's not how clearances work. Just because you have a high level of clearance doesn't mean you can nose about. Information that you look at is on a need to know basis. I had no reason to know about Area 51 other than I wanted to know about it. So I'm no smarter than anyone else on it. And that's what this first sentence means. The right people can look at and use and update data in the right way. If you don't have a need to look at it, you shouldn't be. Because we want to restrict good data security, restricts inappropriate access and updates. And this is a big deal, especially when you have a person who leaves a company. I can tell you of multiple client partners where somebody very senior in business development and sales leaves the company and they're walking out here. Let's have a visual. They'll walk out with a simple thumb drive. And this is a big one. I can show you a much smaller one if you want it. Simple thumb drive full of all of the key customers of that company. And that's a big, I mean, first off, you are violating multiple regulations. And number two, it's really bad for your business. Good data security should be clear, thorough, and binding to everyone, not only your internal employees, but external. As many of you know, we do at EW Solutions, we do a ton of work for many, many big companies. We have a rule of thumb. We do not take customer data or client partner data and put it on our PCs. We just don't. Unless you have a need to do that, you're not allowed to do it. In fact, even then, we don't want to do it. We want to just do it on our client partner systems, because once that's downloaded on your PC, on your laptop, and now problems can happen. Because data security's goal is to ensure the privacy and protection of our critical data. So let me keep going. Gosh, I could keep talking about this. Data privacy is defined simply as the allowed use of data. And we need transparency in the handling of people's data, careful management of our critical data. And we have to do it in such a manner that unauthorized disclosure does not happen while allowing permitted use. And I will tell you, some of the companies I'm working with, they struggle in this area. I gave an example of unauthorized disclosure, but I have a bunch of client partners now where they have locked up their data so tight that the people who do need to use it can't even get to it. And it's a problem, right, Anne Marie?
Mm-hmm.
And I know we're probably thinking of a couple of the same companies right now that we're working with. And we hear from key, chief marketing officers, chief sales executives, they can't even get to the basic customer data that they need to do their job.
Every time they need access, they have to go through 18 hoops in data security.
Yep.
even though their role is one that should permit them to have regular access to selected customer data.
And sometimes those data security procedures and processes, not sometimes, many times, way too onerous,
Yes,
way too heavy handed. They should be streamlined, efficient, and effective. Um, Bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy isn't going to make you more secure. It's just going to make you slow. So, key topic I mentioned I would share what FIPPs is. FIPPs is the United States Federal Trade Commission's Fair Information Practices Principle, FIPPs, and it gives consumers like me, like you, Anne Marie, maybe we'll give
maybe.
her these
And
rights.
redheads are often excluded.
Yeah, that is true. So I think there is a clause not allowing redheads. Maybe, I don't know. But it does give consumers 4 fundamental privacy rights: notice and awareness, choice and consent, access and participation, and integrity and security. Let's look at each one. Some of this you will recognize just based on how you interact with companies. Notice and awareness means consumers should be given notice of an entity's information practices before, that's the key word, before any personal information is collected. So if you signed up for a new piece of software, which I do as a technologist, and even though I'm filling out all these different fields, they should not be sent to that company until I've said it's okay. This is the most fundamental principle of the FIPPs Act, that without consent, you don't get to collect this data. And it really requires that companies explicitly notify some or all of the following: the identification of the entity collecting the data. So you can't pretend to be Microsoft if you're really Microswift. You cannot. You have to identify the use that data is being that is being used for. I'm sorry, I didn't want to use twice in a sentence. But if your goal is to collect this data and then sell it to other people, you have to let people know that. Part of that is identifying any potential recipients of the data, the nature of what's being collected and how it's being collected. And is it voluntary or required? What does that mean? And you'll see this in some of the later FIPPs guidelines. So if you download antivirus software and they want to collect some of your information, is it voluntary to send it or is it required? And they have to let you know that in order to have a relationship with them, because then we can make a choice. Hey, I don't like how you're collecting this. I don't like the information you're storing. I can go elsewhere to your competitor who maybe has some better requirements. The steps taken by the data collector need to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and quality of the data. So that's the first. Second one, notice and awareness. The notice should identify any of the customer's rights, of the consumer's rights, whether it's the use of the data, the right of access, the ability to contest inaccuracies, and I will talk more about that ability in a little bit, the availability to redress for violations of the practice code and how such rights should be exercised. So these guidelines, some of these have been around for a little bit. When the internet came about, a lot of companies said, well, hey, if I collect your data off the internet, that bypasses these regulations. Well, that did work for a number of years, but now the FIPPs have been updated to handle the internet. So when you're posting your disclosure practices on your website, it has to be clear and conspicuous where you're posting it and readily accessible. A lot of companies were posting what they were doing with your data buried in 4 or 5 layers of their website. You'd have to be an expert web crawler to find it. Not anymore. You need to have it be conspicuous and obvious. And the key words here: unavoidable and understandable. So where your customer can't avoid seeing what you're doing, and it's understandable. So you can't use some arcane language that nobody uses anymore, like a Sanskrit. No, you need to use a commonly understood language by your consumer. Let me continue. Choice and consent. In an online world, Choice and consent means giving consumers options to control how their data is being used. Choice relates to secondary uses of information beyond the immediate needs. So the classic examples that I'm sure we all know about: opt in, opt out. In opt in, the customer must take affirmative steps in an opt in system that assumes that the collector of the data cannot use the information for any other purpose unless we as a consumer opt in. The second, opt out. This requires the consumer to affirmatively decline permission for other uses. You'll see this if you've downloaded the latest version of Office. Many times they have opt out. They're like, hey, we're going to collect all your information, sell it for a mega profit, spy on you, and know how much trans fats you're eating, and all this other crazy stuff. But they will have some opt out ones. Personally, for me, I opt out of everything I can. So anyway, opt out assumes that it can use the customer's information for other purposes unless the customer opts out. So key thing. And remember, when you're building these processes, they're not all or nothing, meaning you either are opting in for everything or opting out of everything. You can have little click boxes where you say, I'm opting out of these things and I'm opting in to other ones. So you can mix and match. All right, let me keep going. I have so much to talk about and oh so little time. Access and participation refers to an individual's ability both to access data about himself or herself and to contest the data's accuracy and completeness. So while a company may collect data about you, the data could be wrong, and you get to contest its accuracy and contest its completeness because they're essential. Access that as a company that you give to your consumers must be timely and it must be inexpensive. A simple means for contesting inaccuracy and incomplete data must be available, and there needs to be a mechanism where corrections can be made and then sent to all recipients. I will actually show you an example of this for a large company of how something like this may work in a data governance program. So let me
David,
keep going. Oh yes, Anne-Marie.
we have a couple questions.
Oh, please.
Question number one, how does this relate to data governance? What is the connection between what you're talking about and data governance?
That's a sensational question. So data governance is all about managing, maintaining, and processing and governing your key data. If we don't understand what data we have, if we don't have the right people who understand where the data is located, how are we going to implement governance and security? We won't even know where our data is at. And you'll see this in an example I'm going to walk through. But this is classic, where you may have a customer could request under the laws that, hey, I want you to forget about me. I don't like your company for whatever the reason may be. You need to remove me from all your systems. If you don't have the right processes in place, that customer's data will be sitting in 5, 10, 15, 100, 1,000 applications and sitting on probably thousands of spreadsheets. Ooh, that's a dirty word in this field. So that's where data governance is so critical, because great data governance, world class, the kind that we're talking about in data governance mastery, that's what makes sure that we know where our data is being held and even what it means. So it's a great question, Anne-Marie.
Another question we had is, what about the authority, the regulation to collect personally identifiable information in a privacy notice? I'm not sure I understand the depth of the question.
Yes, so you
I
can.
read it exactly the way it was typed.
Yeah, I'm a little confused on that one also. You absolutely can collect personal information if you follow the guidelines I've walked you through, where people can contest its accuracy and completeness if they either have to opt in or opt out, but they have the choice. That's the big thing. You have to give the people a choice. Notifications, I mean, this is a big deal for spammers. Just because somebody has somebody's name and email address doesn't really mean that you have the right person. So It'd be very easy. Like if you're a spammer right now, I could tell you Anne Marie's email, amsmith@eWsolutions.com. Her first name is Anne, her middle name's Marie, her last name's Smith. Spam away. I'm going to continue on this presentation while I still can breathe.
Yes.
Anne Marie's in Philadelphia. I'm outside of Chicago, so I have a little bit of distance. And I so anyway, Anne Marie, I don't know if I fully answered that one, but if the person who asked it would like to maybe rephrase it, if we didn't cover it, we'll be happy to get to it at the end.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, David.
No problem. Integrity and security. Integrity and security, the data needs to be accurate and it needs to be secure. So my example of a salesperson who just quit the company and takes on a thumb drive all of the customer's data, that's not secure. And this one cracks me up. I want to be vague on this one. We have a client partner who creates very beautiful things. Many of you would know who this company is. And their big thing is they need to have fantastic designs. Their main design area, where all their new designs are, has a giant window in it, like a 6-foot tall window. And I'm thinking a competitor could just get an apartment two blocks away and with a good telescope see everything they're working on. So probably not the most secure. So anyway, integrity and security critical. We do it to ensure the data integrity, and collectors take reasonable steps like using only reputable sources of data and cross-referencing that data against multiple sources, providing consumer access to data and destroying untimely data or converting it to an anonymous form. And here's a couple things. Managerial measures. We need to have those for our data. This is any internal organizational measures that limit access to data. To those individuals with access, do not utilize the data in an unauthorized way. And then technical ones, things like encryption, passwords, verification, storage of data, all critical. All right, I want to keep moving. Privacy is really the true objective of security. If you've built data security properly at your company, then your consumers, your customers, should have privacy as well. Data security governs the technical and physical requirements that keep data protected and confidential. Privacy governs the data rights of individuals and organizations and imposes requirements on the use of that data. Data security and data privacy are not synonyms because privacy is the appropriate use of data. Security establishes privacy, accuracy, reliability, availability, and helps us conform to regulations. Okay, let's look at how data regulations impact our data policies. Remember, data stewards in a data governance program are the ones writing our data policies. So let's look at it. So there are many regulations that an organization needs to adhere to, and I've walked you through them. The big challenge we have is creating an overarching data strategy that allows a company to adhere to not only the current regulations, but also grow to meet future ones. And this is the trick. If you want to become, so we used a term, the whole umbrella term for this webinar series is data governance mastery. If you are truly a master's level in building data governance programs, you understand how to help a company, how to make a company adhere to the regulations that exist today, but also the future ones. I'm going to show you how to do it because these things change. Whenever the United States has their version of GDPR, there's going to be some big changes. Building a regulatory subjects area spreadsheet is a key artifact that we use, and it's part of the data governance guide. The regulatory subject spreadsheet will be the driver of many of your organization's data policies. And it's a great CYA when the regulators come calling. If you don't know what a CYA is, look up that acronym. So a regulatory spreadsheet has different subject areas because why do we need these? Because all these regulations essentially address the same concepts that we do in data. Things like adding data to our systems. This is like a new customer. Deleting data, reading data, requesting data, updating data, the intake, the verification of data, searching, response. These are all common regulatory subject areas. Under these regulatory subject areas, there will be multiple regulations affecting them. I listed some common ones here: CCPA, FISMA, GDPR, HIPAA, internal policies, PHI, PII, third-party cookie, third-party policies. Many large companies have significant partnerships, and in those partnerships, they may require different regulatory adherence. So this allows you to group. Your subgroupings could be the concepts, the regulatory groupings concepts related to your subject, which we show in the far left hand column.
David?
Yes, oh wait, just let me do two more
Oh,
things.
sure. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. Regulatory language, we're going to list all the regulatory language for that subject, for that grouping. And then what is the organizational impact? And I'll show you an example in a minute, but I have a question to answer.
Yes, you do. Does each subject, for example, data addition, have one and only one possible regulatory grouping?
I wish. No, that's a great question. It'll be multiple, and typically something like that, you're going to have several, and that's the big challenge.
So you'll have CCPA for data addition. You might have HIPAA for data addition. You might have PII for data addition.
PHI too,
Yes, I just picked.
depending on what you are.
Yes.
It's a great point. And these spreadsheets, if you're thinking they can get kind of big,
Yeah.
wait till you see the next slide. It's a trimmed down version. Great question, Anne-Marie. So here's an example of this spreadsheet, just a little bit of the information put in. We're looking at data deletion. Regulatory grouping will be PII, and we're looking at PII deletion under CCPA. And this is the actual regulation put in here. Luckily for everyone, I will not read this because you will fall asleep. But it really lists out, hey, here are the regulations we have to deal with when we talk about deleting data. And then look over to the right-hand side, the organizational impact. So what all these regulations mean is when a customer is deleted, all PII-related fields for that customer need to be deleted throughout our systems and our documents. Ooh, that last part was tricky. Also our documents. And that is the legal organizational impact. And you would list this out for each one of the regulations that impact the deleting of data. So very significant. Let me show, because I know, let me say we're doing on time. We have about 16 minutes left, not even. Anne-Marie is the host, runs a very tight ship.
Yes, I do.
I feel like the heat lamps on me now to keep moving. So I want to walk through a data policies workflow. So when we work with companies on data governance, you need to have policies in place and you need to build workflows. This one is a simple one, relatively simple. And what this is about is a customer. Remember, in the FIPPs regulations and in CCPA and GDPR, a customer can request and think of demand and has the right to say, forget me. I don't want to be part of your company anymore. I don't want to know you. And even though that may hurt your feelings, they have that right. So what workflow does your team need to go through? Here's a great example of a workflow that we use. So in the left-hand column, we have the requester, business and technical stewards, the responsible data steward. So who's overall responsible? Think the data owner, lead data steward, as all of you remember, because you've been here for our whole series. The lead steward is responsible for a domain or subject area. If you don't remember any of that, go back to our previous webinars. They're all on YouTube and you can watch them. The domain data steward group, the coordinating group and the data governance council. So let's start at the beginning. In this workflow, a requester, that's the start, upper left-hand corner, there is a request to delete a customer, and it comes from the customer themselves. When that happens, the responsible data steward, number 2, is notified of this request, and they have to send back a receipt that, yes, I've gotten the request. That responsible data steward begins a workflow to identify the required instances of that customer. So then you go to number 4, analyze key databases for customer data instances. This is something both our business stewards, so several people may be involved, along with our technical stewards. What they are going to do is they're going to look at that customer's data and they will make the decision. Can we delete them fully, meaning remove their presence, or do we have to lock their data? So if somebody owes you money, if a customer owes you money, they can't ask you to delete them as a way to avoid paying you. So in those cases, you can lock their data, but you can still go get the money they owe you. So if we are able to delete that customer, you see in this decision, 5A, trigger customer deletion process. If not, if they owe us money or some other situation, we will lock their data. And maybe we have special flags in our systems that allow us to keep that data in our system, but only use it for collections or whatever the reason for locking is. Once all that happens, we send notifications of the actions taken, and these go to the lead steward, number 7. They review the process, and they would look and say, hey, we did a good job, or no, we didn't. And they are going to make a decision. Is the process successful? If it's no, then you go to the connector A, which goes back to the upper left-hand side, which goes back to number 4. And we're going to go through the process again. If it was done right, now notice the lead steward is verifying it. So the people doing the work are not the one verifying it was correct. It's a great check and balance. The lead steward, if they think it was done correctly, they're going to communicate to the customer the results, meaning you were successfully deleted, the end. Great example of a data governance policy workflow of how you're actually going to get this work done. In the final analysis, you can create, here's the big thing that I want you to understand with privacy and security. You need to understand the regulations impacting your company. Maybe you don't have client partner, you don't have customers in Europe, so you don't have to really worry that much about GDPR. Maybe California is not a state you care about. I mean, it is a very large state, but maybe it's not relevant to you. You need to figure out the regulations impacting you, and you need to work with your legal department. They are going to be seminal in this effort. Make sure you follow the best practices that were given to you. Make sure you understand FIPPs. That's fundamental. Make sure you understand GDPR. Make sure you come up with these workflows like the one I just showed you. Do all this, and your security not only will be top shelf today, but as the next regulation comes out, you'll be ready for it. With that, I'm just going to go to our last slide. We have a lot more of this. Anne-Marie mentioned some of our courses at datamanagementeducation.com. And with that, I want to hear some questions from everybody else. And I should stop sharing my screen as well.
David, we don't have time for questions.
Oh.
And we've answered them all through typing through the system because we really don't have time for the questions today because we're basically at the top of the hour. I want to thank everybody who attended. The components of enterprise data management were just asked. I recommend that you go to datamanagementu.com and read the article on the components of enterprise data management. It will be easier than us explaining them all right here. Datamanagementu.com. See the URL here at the bottom of the screen.
Oh, Anne-Marie, share your screen, please.
Oh, yes, thank you.
That always helps.
That does help, doesn't it? Share screen. Share. Datamanagementu.com. You can
And
register for subscribe for free. There are hundreds of articles out there on all areas of enterprise data management, including the components of enterprise data management, data security, and how data security and data privacy work with data governance. Next month, our webinar, how to change your organization to ensure successful data governance. Many people ask us for ways to structure an organization to improve or start a data governance program. Thursday, October 28th at 12 p.m. noon Central Standard Time in the US, and GMT -5 for our international subscribers. Once again, our host will be the world famous David Marco.
am I the host or the presenter?
I'm the, that's right.
You're the host. The
I'm the-
world famous Dr. Anne-Marie Smith will be presenting. I got this, Anne-Marie, or will be hosting. I just screwed it up. And I will be presenting once again, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise.
Right, exactly. We'll see you October 28th. Thank you so much for your attendance. Remember, the webinar slides are available at datamanagementu.com. Look for the webinar menu option. All attendees who attended the entire webinar will receive a certificate in about a week, awarding the professional development unit. We have quite a few courses available on datamanagementeducation.com. Please check them out, enroll, and become a master in data governance.
Anne-Marie,
What,
who
David?
teaches that data governance mastery class? I hear it's
I was
really
going to
great.
mention that after my sentence.
Oh,
The instructor is our world famous presenter, David Marco.
don't let that hold you back, please.
Actually, it's an excellent course. The data governance mastery course is excellent. If you're interested in developing a solid foundation on enterprise data management in all the disciplines, there's a course there too. Thank you all again. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day and a week. Register now for October 28th session, and we'll see you then.
Take care.